What if I told you that the St. Louis Blues have a good chance of making it to the postseason? This is all coming up here in Locked On Blues.
You're Locked On Blues, your daily podcast on the St. Louis Blues. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Blues podcast, home of the Locked On Podcast Network, where you get your team every day. And I'm so happy and grateful that you guys choose to listen to the St. Louis Blues with all the current information here in Locked On Blues. I am Haley Taylor Simon, and I am your host here on Locked On Blues, and I am ecstatic to be telling you all about today's episode. So not only am I going to talk about the boldest predictions of the season, a prospect that the Blues drafted in the first round this year has been making some name for himself. And then, of course, Blues History Minute on this day, since I do find this to be a little bit fun, since I am a big history nerd, as I explained on yesterday's episode, and you seem to like it. So we're going to continue with it. Before I get into today's episode, I just want to let you all know that I am not somebody to complain about weather, right? Because it's summertime. Summer is nice, but I get overheated so easily. So if I ever look like icky, just know it's the weather. It takes its toll on me. So just want to put that out there. If I don't ever look 100%, it's just because I don't feel great because of the weather. So let's get into some bold predictions for this upcoming season for your St. Louis Blues. Okay, the Blues in the playoffs. Will it happen? I think yes. I think there's a stronger possibility that that happens than there is that it does not happen. I understand the concern, and I understand what needs to go on in order for St. Louis to be successful. But at the end of the day, I do believe that the Blues will make it to the postseason. I did ask you on Twitter, though, at Locked On Blues, do you see the Blues making it to the postseason? And 46% of you said yes, while 54% of you said no. I understand the concern, and I hear you when it comes to the concern. I also think that the concern that you express is valid because they did not show you that they are a playoff contending team this past season. I just think that the reason why they're going to make the playoffs is because they're a better team than they executed on ice. I believe that this could be the final, and I know Berube has contracts, but like coaches and people get fired all the time, like despite having contracts. What if this could be the ultimate test if the team doesn't make it back to the postseason? There is a lot at stake, not just for the players, but for other people in the Blues organization. And that is my concern right now is if the Blues don't make it to the postseason, then how is this going to impact people's jobs, people's livelihoods? Because to me, it just seems like it's kind of make it or explode. That was a little dramatic. I was like, explode. But I do think that. I think that this team will have to implode in some way. I don't see St. Louis being one of those teams that just continues on without making more change. I think it's also something else that I talked about earlier on Locked On Blues a couple weeks ago, that not enough got done in this not enough got done. I was going to say not enough got done, period. But then I just, overall, not enough got done. In the off season, it's an important time for you to reconstruct your team. And I just don't think that the Blues did enough on that end. I have watched so many other teams around the league completely reconstruct, like the Blackhawks in our division. And not only do they get Bedard, but they also got Kane. Like, they did so many things to make their team better. And then, I mean, not Kane. They got Taylor Hall from the Bruins. Wow. See, when somebody's on a team for so long, you get used to it. Okay, no, they got T Hall. But it's one of those things where teams have completely reconstructed. They've picked up some great talent, and the Blues just seem to be the same, minus Kevin Hayes. And that in itself isn't even a good thing because the guy doesn't have longevity. When I think about the St. Louis Blues, I think about the future of the team, and I think about not just 1 or 2 seasons from now. I think about 5 seasons from now when the guys that we drafted, not even in this draft class, but last draft class, begin to come up and we get to see them. They should have more solid players on the ice supporting them. It can't just all depend on the guys that the Blues draft. It depends on trades. There's so many other factors that go into making a hockey team successful. And I just don't see that from this from this off season to make it to a postseason. But the reason why I say that this is a bold prediction of mine is there are solid players on the Blues, right? I always will support my main man Benner, and then of course Jay Folk, Braden Shen. Like there's guys on the team that are talented, and I'm not denying that they're Robert Thomas, even younger guy. I'm not denying that there isn't talent. I think what my main concern is that it comes down to is, are they going to utilize these guys differently, or is it going to be the same old story? Because I think you can get a pretty good picture for how this team will be within the first month of hockey. I truly believe that. Sometimes I know people say, oh, it takes longer. I believe that it's going to be within the first month. We will see what the Blues are actually going to be this season. Are they going to do the same old, or are they going to be a team that comes out ready to win? Or are they going to play with their full potential? Now, while I'm saying this, I understand my tone of voice might sound angry, and this is predictions. This isn't, me ranting, but it does draw conversation. What do you think? Do you think that this team just didn't play to their full potential last season? Or do you believe that this is a bust year again? I hate going in with that mindset, though. I do, because hockey is so enjoyable, and there's something more than I love about St. Louis hockey. And the whole concept of going into a season expecting to do poorly just doesn't sit right with me. It just bleeps me off, because we're going to keep it PG, because it does bleep me off. And it is unacceptable. And I refuse to have that mentality. I'm sorry, I'm supporting my team and going into the season being a little bit optimistic. Of course, there's always a chance that they're going to play the same way that they played last season. Of course there is. But that takes away from the enjoyment, the excitement of a new season. There could be trades made throughout the season. It's not just, this is the roster you have now, this is where it's going to end. Things change all the time. Look at the Las Vegas Golden Knights having 6 goalies this past season and still winning the cup. They didn't even have Aiden Hill for the longest time. Like, it just... It's one of those things where, yes, 2 things can be true. The Blues did not do enough in this offseason. And yes, they might struggle. Or it could be, yes, the Blues didn't do enough in this offseason, but the guys actually finally put whatever they needed to put into, because I know that they played hard, but maybe with some adjustments, maybe it's some line changes. I don't know what it is, but maybe something just clicked and they've been playing better. And that's what I'm hoping. I'm not expecting the Blues to win the cup this season. I'm expecting the Blues to get a wild card spot, to make it into the playoffs. I'm not crazy. I'm not going to say, oh yeah, the Blues are going to win the Central. No, because that's not going to happen when you have the Avalanche. You have, the Wild are a pretty good team. They didn't really decrease in talent. The Stars are good. And of course the Blackhawks, they definitely purposely tanked. but you have a lot of talented teams. And then you have some untalented teams, like the Yotes, that do not concern me, but that's not the point. The Jets, too, they're another team that I'm not worried about. What I am going to say is this, though. I think going in with a mentality of, hey, let's be a little bit optimistic is not a bad thing. I think that makes you human in a sense where you are going to be excited about the team. And I think that's why hockey is the love of my life, because I'm always excited about it. And yes, in 2019, it was a dream come true seeing the Blues host the Cup. Truly. But it's like that itch of wanting it again. And I think, and I'm just going to say this because I don't know if anybody else feels this way. When the Blues won, my mindset was, yes, I'm not expecting them to have back-to-back wins, but it's one of the most devastating feelings seeing another team host the Cup after you did. And it sticks with you. That feeling, it's not a nice feeling, because while you were so happy and grateful that your team finally won it and got it, it's worse than anything when you're not the reigning Stanley Cup champions. It's such a bad feeling. And that's why, yeah, I am hungry for the Blues to get back there and to win it, because I miss the feeling. I loved being on top. It was one of the coolest experiences. And now that that's gone, it just makes me want to get back there. And I know I'm not a player. I know I'm not a coach. I know I'm just your host of Locked On Blues. But as a fan, it's one of those things where, yeah, the Knights won the Cup, and yeah, your team's only been in the league for 6 seasons. Congratulations. What a long drought that you had to go through. Meanwhile, so it's just one of those things in perspective that I find quite interesting, but it is something to talk about because not a lot of people understand the feeling of watching other teams host the Cup after you did, and how it just brings back all these memories of winning and what that was like. And then it just goes away. And then it's a new season, nobody cares, and then it's like on to the next. And that's like the cool thing about sports too, in a way, right? Where it's like the season's done, everyone's just on to the next. And yeah, it's good when you're losing and you're not doing well, but when you win, you want to take that in. And part of what I want the Blues to do is to be a winning team, a winning organization. And of course they can do that. Of course they have the ability to. But it's kind of like the Bruins. I know that we beat them in the Stanley Cup, but people look at them as a winning organization. I know they're an original six. I know they've been around, but maybe that's why they get treated so differently by the national media, is because of that, because they have that notability and people just assume winning when it comes to Boston. And even with Chicago, it's another case where, yeah, we all dislike the Blackhawks. There is no doubt about that. But people associate them with being a successful organization. While I understand that, it would be kind of cool for St. Louis to be noted as that. But in order for St. Louis to be noted as that, we need the next 10, and I know I'm talking long term, maybe 10 seasons of consistent winning. I don't want to be known as the team that had a Cinderella story, won the cup, and then that was it. I hate that. I hate that I'm even saying that, but that's how sometimes I feel like the media looks at us when we have been successful. Sure, only one cup in our time being around, but there's teams that have none. And it's not fair either to compare to some of the original 6 teams when it was literally only 6 teams in the league compared to 32 now. So that's another thing, and that's something that has also bothered me. And I know I'm going on a bit of a rant, but that's something I wanted to bring up is that you cannot compare how many cups Chicago has compared to us because they were around a lot longer. It's like, come on now. There's co-host Stella, the cat. Whenever I say co-host, I'm like, I wonder if people really think I mean co-host. So Evan chimed in on this conversation about your boldest predictions, and he said no captain will be named. 3 alternate captains: Shen, Pareko, Folk, Thomas. Oh, Folk or Thomas. I think it would go to Folk over Thomas, but that's a good prediction. I really hope there is a captain named just because I selfishly want to see a captain being named. But we all know how I feel on that one here in Locked On Blues. I'm a little biased towards a Mr. Braden Shen potentially being a captain. But this drew for a good conversation. And I want to have more conversations like this where I'm able to talk to you about, this doesn't sit right with me, and here's why. And I think that while it did take the segment to make it a little bit longer, I think that this was a fun conversation. So I liked it. I'm going to tell you about FanDuel Sportsbook. Take your first swing at betting MLB on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets, up to $200. That's right. Just bet 20 bucks and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's 200 you can spend betting everything from the money line to the over under or to who you think is going to get the first home run. All in an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. There's no better place to bet on MLB than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/locked on to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/locked on. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. It was a fun little read. I do love FanDuel, so for me, I'm like, hey. Speaking of, hey, Otto Stenberg with an assist in the World Junior Summer Showcase. Otto was the 25th pick. I know I've mentioned him before, and I'm just going to tell you a little bit about Otto and how the play went down and why everyone is so amazed. So Anton Wahlberg hopped off the bench and accepted an Otto Stenberg pass and quickly fired a glove-sided wrister from the right circle, the second goal of the World Junior Summer Showcase. Sweden and Finland tied 1-1 at the end of the second. Beautiful pass. Like when I'm telling you, beautiful pass. And this is what I said about Otto, that we could expect to see him be a real team player, and especially when it comes to passing. This kid is a stud when it comes to passing. And for not only Blues fans like you and I to comment on that, but for other people in the National Hockey League that enjoy other teams that have commented on Otto, it just goes to show the Blues got themselves a solid player. So again, 25th overall pick in the first round. And this kid has been impressing everybody. And I wish so badly I could play you the clip of him making that pass. It was insane. When I saw that, my jaw dropped. See, this is a guy that the Blues saw a future in. And I understand when Otto was selected, there were some people that said, why do the Blues do this? And you have to trust Army. You have to trust the scouting coaches. You need to trust every single person that was involved in this decision, because now Otto is somebody that all these other teams are jealous that they do not have. And that's what it comes down to, is the fact that there is a super talented guy that is being noticed by so many people, and he's our guy. he will be on the Blues. I would say maybe 2 years I could see him. So I think that it is one of those things where Otto could definitely be on the team soon. But how cool is that? That one of our prospects is really just making his name known. And I really do love that. That makes me really happy for Mr. Otto. So, alrighty. So, I let you do this thing called Blues History Minute. And it's going to be a new summer segment because I'm a huge history nerd and I found this to be super fun. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to you about some historic things in Blues history, some stats of players that we usually don't talk about, and things like that. And this is a way just to have some fun, just to talk. So there really hasn't been anything that happened today on this day in history, but that is okay because I'm going to tell you the most wins in the NHL by decades. So in the 1980s, think of a player in the 1980s. Lewitt with the most wins in the 1980s. He was one of the best goalies, and it's one of those things where Mr. Tony Lewitt was so successful. So that's an interesting thing. And this was for goalies, by the way. So I don't want anybody to think, oh, Haley, what is she talking about? That was for goalies. It's so funny. So the Blues played the Soviet team, and this was from an old newspaper clipping. So the Blues ended up playing the Russians, which is another cool thing. Blues former, aka the original PR man, Wayne Cooper, shared some memories, and it is one of the coolest things. The opening night program, and it was the St. Louis Blues versus the Minnesota North Stars, Wednesday, October 11th in 1967. And this has to be one of the coolest things ever because it just tells you all different stats about the Blues. And Mr. Wayne Cooper was super sweet and passionate. The magic of the first season and the victory over the North Stars, and it ended around midnight, that game. And you got to sometimes take a look back at history, and I just think that was a cool moment to share. So nothing that happened today, but when things don't happen today, it's not always a bad thing to talk about things that have happened in the past. And I am somebody that likes to reminisce and to talk about, in this day in history, the past, because I think that this builds character for what the St. Louis Blues truly are. So I do my research, I find my facts, and I will tell you all here on Locked On Blues because while, as I said, some people are not huge history nerds, it's fun to find some fun facts about the Blues and they can brag to people about it. Like, hey, did you know that the Blues' ever first game was against the Minnesota North Stars? No, because when people think of Minnesota, they think of the Wild, but then there was the North Stars, and it's just like hockey history with Haley. Haley's hockey history. We'll find something that sounds a little bit better. But as always, make sure you follow on Twitter at Locked On Blues or my Twitter, Haley T. Simon. Also, before I end this episode, the NHL tagged our mascot, Louie, in an Instagram video right after I posted yesterday's video about how I think the NHL is maybe coming around now to the Blues. And that happened, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's happening. So I just wanted to share that with you. All right, I will talk to you tomorrow for a fun Friday episode. And this week about you has been a lot of fun. And just like always, let's go Blues.